Hello, hello, hello. How's everybody doing today? Welcome back for another one of our live sessions talking about AI. So in our last discussion, Erik and I discussed just sort of the wide array of tooling that is out there and the progress that the industry is making, how quickly things are iterating and changing. We touched a little bit on some of the gotchas, some of the ways that you can start accessing and implementing some of these tools in your daily practice. And today is going to be a bit of a different experience. We're going to dive into a tool that we've been exploring and working with. And something that one of our team members, Erik Guzman, who was on our conversation last time, he's going to join me here in just a minute. But we're going to discuss a tool that he's been building out, we've been looking at and shaping, and the goal behind it is to show how these tools aren't just tools that are out there that you can go visit a website and use like ChatGPT to get on their site and, have a conversation with it and get information back and have it create some marketing materials or whatever, it is that you're using ChatGPT for. This is going to be a little bit of a deeper dive on some of the tooling that we're starting to implement and we're starting to work with some of our clients on to help implement these tools into your applications, into your websites, into your company, into the tooling that you have, and allowing for these tools, not just allowing for, but giving context and parameters around how these tools are leveraging information, right? So what kind of information are we giving it access to from our systems, from whether it's wikis or databases or content, and then how it can assist and help customers through having a bot-like interaction. So we're going to dive into it. Excuse me. We're going to dive into it. I'll bring Erik on here in just a second. But first, I also wanted to say that this tool, this iteration of this tool, Erik has built in Redwood JS, which is also that's a framework that we've been working with for quite a while now, actually the last couple of years since they started developing the framework. It's come a long way. It's a very robust, incredible React framework. And because it's something that we have seen a bright future in, and we've been really, investing a lot in, we have been able to partner with Redwood.js, the actual core team, and the company behind it, Preston Warner Ventures, or at least the sort of funding agent behind the core team. And we've been able to partner with them to help produce and bring the very first Redwood.js conference to the world, which is going to happen this September, towards the end of September. So if you're interested in React frameworks, or you want to find out more about Redwood.js, definitely take a look. You can check it out on all our socials. We've been talking a lot about the conference. And there's also links to get tickets if you would like to come join us for that conference. It's going to be incredible. We are bringing that ecosystem to Southern Oregon. We're actually having the conference in Southern Oregon. It's going to be incredible. So really looking forward to that. And again, this tool that we're going to be demonstrating for you today was built in Redwood.js. And so, yeah. Again, we eat our own dog food, I guess. If that's the term I would apply there. So I'm going to go ahead and bring in my guest, my very special guest for today, which is he's over here, I guess, Mr. Erik Guzman. How are you doing, Erik?
Hey, how's it going, everyone? Got to be back.
Glad to be back. That's right. So anyways, Erik has been working on this tooling. He's been working a lot with the various AI APIs. He has a bunch of his own little side projects that he works on. One of those we talked about last time, which is his closed caption plugin for Twitch. And he's put a lot, over the last handful of years, you've built that into be quite a robust plugin. And so now, you've been experimenting a lot and working on how do we take and leverage these AI tools through APIs to bring that power into the products that we're building, the websites that people are hosting, and essentially level up that experience that someone has when they come and try to utilize your product. So, Erik, can you talk a little bit about what the inspiration was for you to sort of dive in and start working on this project?
So, like you mentioned, we see in the news and articles like ChatGPT, go to ChatGPT, use this functionality. But the undertone of that is there's an API, there's these services, there's these long language models that we could use to build out stuff. So I'm like, well, instead of going to ChatGPT website or going to some other service that offers it, it's like, how can I incorporate this technology and build something with it that could act as like a proof of concept to myself and to others that this sort of generative AI can be beneficial to enhancing your product line or internal tools or whatever it may be.
Awesome. Totally awesome. And we've also, again, this is something we've been exploring and working with, some solutions for our clients, because our clients have a wide ranging need for different tools. And over the years, we've built out tools that allow humans to do these jobs in a more efficient way. And the goal is always to take the things that humans aren't great at and sort of, iterate those into automation, right? So automate as much as we can to remove the need for humans to do jobs that humans either A, aren't great at, or B, don't enjoy. It's just like moving data around and doing processing and things like that. Well, now we're in a position to where there's a sort of, I don't know, I guess maybe I'm overstepping by saying like a cognitive ability, but there's an ability for reason to take place. And in these automated helpers, right? So rather than just say, if this happens, then this happens, or when this happens, do this and this. So rather than us instructing that sequence, we can basically teach it like we teach a team member. We say, here's all of our standard operating procedures. Here's our processes. Here's how we do what we do. Here's our knowledge base. And then this trained AI can also have intelligent appearing conversations with our customers. They can also, eventually, they can start to take some actions to automate some of those processes of onboarding or, things like that. So right now we're just starting to skim that surface of saying, okay, well, let's give it all of the access to all of our wikis, like how we do what we do, what our processes are, what our standard operating procedures are. Let's give it that information and allow it to answer questions in an intelligent way and to help provide that as a service. So earlier when I was writing a post about this, someone who I respect very much wrote back and said, check your definitions, bots aren't service. And I thought about that and I was thinking, well, what is service, right? And I think, the definition of service is actually pretty simple, and it doesn't actually have to do with a person doing something for you, because any tool can provide a service if it was put there with the intention for you to use it for that purpose, right? So in this situation, I do believe that we can set these things up in order to create and deliver a service to people, in lieu of a human having to be sitting there by the phone waiting for a call, or sitting there by a chat client waiting to answer somebody's question. This is something that we can train that will sit there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and be able to answer those questions in an intelligent way and help our customers reach their outcomes, understand our products better, know exactly where the information is, and get that delivered to them in a smart way. So, did you have anything to add to that, Erik?
I think bots are services. Is service. It's just that the question is it good service?
Right.
And someone might discount, well, most of the time, at least historically, bots have been poor service. So then if there's poor service, then is it service at all? But we're reaching a point where that might, that's starting to get stretched, right? With this
Sure.
generative AI being able to converse with it to get information out of it.
Absolutely. And then, I think that some of what's happening is there's this sort of tendency to want to say, well, you can't replace humans with bots. That, like, let's not replace humans doing human things. And I would totally agree with that. I think that in a situation where there is a requirement for a human to participate in a conversation, then yes, like if it's needed or it's part of that experience that's being delivered, absolutely. I also think that there's a lot of outcomes that people are trying to get to, and they're just they're not great necessarily sometimes at searching for things, or sometimes our information isn't very searchable. It's not very, it's written in language that someone else doesn't speak necessarily, or it's jargon based, and in those situations, I think that these bots can be really incredible at helping connect people to the information they're looking for, right? And actually it's sort of a revolution akin to what we experienced when Google came along, when the ability to search all of the content on the internet and find something, or find the top results for that. When that happened, it changed the world. It changed how we find information. It changed how much information was accessible to us. But there was a catch. And that catch is, you actually, in order to find the information you're looking for, you actually have to be pretty good at searching, at using that tool. You have to learn the tricks. You've got to learn how to ask the questions or frame it, or you have to know what you're looking at when the responses come back. And there's a lot of sifting and whatnot. Well, we're in a position now where where we can actually have much more, not just intelligent searches, but searches that we can refine over time and continue to add information to based on what we learn, and it's learning with us to make our search better over time and to actually provide us the information we're looking for. And then, as Erik's going to demonstrate in a minute here, to actually take some actions and help us shape that into something, and assist us in writing things or, reaching other outcomes. So let's talk real quick before we dive into the demo. Let's talk about some of the pros and cons of taking this approach, right? Yeah. So some of the pros that we talked about earlier, Erik, is with proper training, these bots can drastically reduce the time it takes to, like we said, research and make sense of large sets of information. And there was a use case that you were talking about regarding a legal team. Can you talk about that or share that use case?
Yeah. So I recently heard an article and podcast / read an article on there is a company that's using AI to automate some of the legal process. And last time we had our fireside chat, we kind of talked about that legal team that submitted case filing to a judge, and it like misquoted a bunch of different casework, and they're like, "Oh my God, I didn't know that. I thought it was amazing."
Made some of it up in some instances.
But in this case, this is a company that is using AI to do that, consuming it. The AI is consuming information and is able to analyze it and figure out information on there. And one of the awesome use cases for this is it's being used by a legal defense fund that helps exonerate people that were falsely incarcerated. And they found that by using this service, that what would take paralegals a month to sift through a bunch of different case files, evidence, to find inconsistencies in witness statements and other types of things that they're trying to look for, the AI was able to do this in a day or two. And it's phenomenal because it's changing the way, the way legal teams can operate, because now for this company that is, offering pro bono service to help exonerate these people, they're able to do more faster at lower cost. They still have their paralegals. The paralegals are still vetting all the information, but the AI is able to ingest the information, reason about it, and return back results that they need quicker than they would have to do it manually. And that's an amazing use case.
That's amazing. I mean, imagine and remember, AI can consume all forms of data, audio, video, and textual, and make sense of it, or at least learn it in context of each other, right? So whether it actually understands what it's looking at or not, it doesn't really matter, because it's able to make sense of it for us, right? So I like the idea of being able to load in a bunch of security footage and have it find anomalies or find, source things. Like, there's some really interesting and scary ideas that can happen from that. But then there's also, in the legal context, some things that are amazing for these small teams to be able to go through large quantities of information to help exonerate people who should not be incarcerated, right? And I think that's an amazing thing. So, okay, so let's. So there's a bunch of pros there. One of the cons that we are noticing, and you're going to see this in the demo that we're going to provide, is that due to the massive amount of processing that it takes in order to run these large language models that are leveraged, there's some time, in order to, there's like a delay or a lag in results due to the computational demands of it, right? So you form your question or your part of the chat, that's got to go and be processed. And we're going to go through what that processing is, so you can start to understand how these things work, which allows us to use them better when we understand them. But then in addition to that, once it goes out, you can see all the processes it goes through just on our side. Then it goes out, and on their end, it's amazing the work that is being done. This is why it takes these massive server farms to process these large language models. We can do some stuff locally, and those are getting better. The local models are actually getting to be pretty incredible, but they still take mass amounts of computing power to run. So we'll demonstrate this for you. You'll see that. But the con of that is that there is some lag time in the conversation, right? While it's thinking and figuring out a good response for you. So Erik, are we maybe ready to jump in? Are you ready on your end? Okay, great. Let's jump in. And then after we talk about this, we will talk about some of the other pieces, elements to it, like such as costs of, running these systems, because these APIs aren't free. There is a cost to running these queries. And so we'll cover some of that. We'll discuss that and the pros and cons and maybe some of the gotchas with that. But yeah, without further ado, let's dive right into this demo.
Sure thing. All right.
So what do we got here? What are we looking at?
So we're looking at a Redwood app, and this has pretty much been my ChatGPT playground of testing out what a large language model can do, and me testing, seeing these demos that these other companies are doing, and being like, we are the only ones, and being like, well, can I reproduce a subset of that for my own personal use case, or in this situation, a business use case? So there are several examples that we'll go through, and I'll go through the very first one. So we talked about this last time, but I have a product called the String Closed Captioner that is a Twitch plugin. And I have a wiki page, a knowledge base that has information of how to use it, how to set it up. And I was like, well, how can I go about setting up ChatGPT to someone ask it a question about the features of it, and it give it a response, and it respond back with information. So
before you go further, when you say, how can I talk to ChatGPT and ask it a question, you're not actually going to OpenAI's website and opening ChatGPT to do this, right? This is a different interface here. This is a local app built in Redwood, which is React as a primary JavaScript framework. And this is a local page that you have an input field on. And then this dropdown, can you explain, is the dropdown just really to show demonstrations of different use cases? Is that correct?
Correct. Each dropdown is piping to a different set of JavaScript code that is going to leverage ChatGPT API and combine it with with the knowledge base depending on the dropdown, and it do different things, different actions depending on the data set.
All right.
So the cool thing about the integrations with these large language models now, especially the generative AI ones like OpenAI's ChatGPT, is we can use the API and we can combine it with our data set for it to give back contextual answers on it. We don't have to do machine learning model training. We don't need like sets of GPUs and hundreds of thousands of dollars to train an AI model. The AI, if we can give it information and then give it the information and then ask it a question about the information, it can give us an answer based off the information like it was trained on that. So for this first example, for the String Closed Captioner, I had taken all of the wiki docs of the website, parsed that out into what are called embeddings, which are special numerical representations of the data. And then I can ask, and then that is what OpenAI uses, ChatGPT uses, or that's how we're going to use to do searches for this information. So it's going to end up being a two-step process in terms of the results, and we'll see right here. So let's just ask it, what is String Closed Captioner? Oh, I purposely set this up so we can see requests coming in. And just to quickly go through this, so the question was, what is String
Closed Captioner? So what are we seeing on the right-hand side here? Is this is a log of activity that the app that you're writing is taking in order to interact with the API, the ChatGPT API through OpenAPI, correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
through the API. And there's a two-step process that is going on with this. The first, and this is so we can use our knowledge base with the ChatGPT API. The first is the question. And if you if earlier I had mentioned that I had taken all the pages from my website or from my wiki articles and converted them to embeddings, a special textual representation of all the text. And the first thing I do is I query against that information to find all articles, all
Just to be
page
clear,
content.
what is a query?
Query is just a question to the database.
Perfect.
So this is all stored inside the database. So I just do a lookup based off the text, and I say, give me all the text that is similar based off my embeddings, which is like a special, again, numerical representation, and it returned back all the pages that would match, that would contain the question of what is string closed captioner. So it returned back several pages of information. It looks like about 5 different pages.
Okay, so
And
just
then
so I can clarify here, you sent that question to what database? Your local version, your local database
my
that
local
you've
my local
and
database.
it's right that is in this cloud form that this specialized version of how it's stored so that it can do this uh, basically run the query to give back what the top results are. Is that correct? Like, okay, keep going.
Yeah. Using and Eduardo asked the question, is embedding a manual process? Embedding is not a manual, is a manual process. I had to, just like where you're storing information into a knowledge base just in general, like the text itself, you also have to store, along with the text, you have to store the embedding representation of it. So we're doing a comparison, a search on the embedding representation, which is a whole other can of worms to get into. But basically our text is represented as OpenAI as embeddings, and our question is converted to an embedding, and we could do a comparison search not on the text but on the embeddings, which is going to, based off OpenAI's research, is going to provide us a better result on the data sets versus just doing string searches on the data.
Okay, so real quick, I do want to preface this little section that we're going through right here as this is the 5-minute geek corner with Erik Guzman. We are a little bit deep down the rabbit hole, but it's important for us to share some of this, even if it's kind of going over your head or not. If you totally understand what's happening here, great. But it's just to show how much is happening on our side of this conversation and how much is happening on the other side of the conversation and what kind of a response comes back. And again, it's just to show the process that this goes through so that you can see it's not, it actually, even though there's a lot of context here, it's actually fairly simple to interact with these APIs, but there is some setup, there's some programming on the local side, and that's what you would hire a company like ours to help you with, is to build the sort of gateway between your information and this API. And then, as you can see, this text box really could be anywhere on your website or anywhere on your your web application. And you wouldn't necessarily have this drop down. It would be your context would be pre-selected as basically what, it would be your database that it's searching through. So right now he has this drop down to say, I want you to use this model and this data when I run this search, right? So, okay, go ahead. Keep going. Right. Let's keep moving forward through the geek time.
Yeah. And to be clear,
stay with us. Stay with us.
Yeah, and to be clear, that the knowledge base isn't just those 5 articles. There's even though it's a small knowledge base, there's about 15 to 20 pages on here. So so the thing is like we have to do a simulator. We do a top search, and we're only going to grab a subset of those articles, those top articles that match the query string, and we're going to feed that into ChatGPT. Because I saw that there was a question about if we have a huge knowledge base. Yes, you can't feed the whole knowledge base. That's why we're doing like the similarity search query to like trim it down to hit our top results. We get here's our top results all combined together, and this is using the frameworks that the coding wise are combining all together, And once we combine it all together, we send that, we take all this information, and then we ask ChatGPT, hey, so here's kind of where the magic happens, where we combine the data sets with the ChatGPT API. Given the following extracted parts of a long document and a question, create the final answer. If you don't know the answer, just say you don't know. Don't try to make up the answer. So we give it so this is like interacting with ChatGPT itself. You could try this at home in ChatGPT by taking a bunch of pages of your knowledge base, throw it in there, and then ask it a question about that information you just fed it. So we're doing that, but we're doing that through the API. So we give it all the information, and then we ask it the question, what is string closed captioner? And then ChatGPT is going to take that context, analyze it based off the question, and then it will spit out an answer, which it's iterating through and all this information, and it will then spit out this generated answer from ChatGPT, just like with on the web client.
Okay, so I have a couple things I want to clarify here. So when you were talking about the crafting of crafting of the prompt, right? So here's a question that came in. What is stream closed captioner? This is like the customer's question. They're asking this information. Then that comes in, and when I was saying earlier about how you get to teach your SOPs, the way that you talk, the way you answer questions, what your sort of, I guess ethics are around the answering questions. So for instance, he says, if you don't know, then say, I don't know, don't guess or make up an answer, right? Which the way that the AI is essentially created is it's trying to always give you an answer unless it's specifically told not to. If you've done some ChatGPT work, you'll know that you've gotten yourself into situations where it says, I'm just an AI bot. I cannot answer that for you. And that's because it was programmed to say, if people talk about these things or ask these types of questions, don't make up an answer for it. Don't give it an answer because it's outside of the parameters or ethics barriers or morality barriers that we want to create for you, right? So you get to do all of that in crafting the types of responses that you want it to give. So this is the question, and then that question comes in. It has access to all of your information that you've provided for it. And then on top of that, it has instructions about how you like people to be responded to. And you get to frame that yourself as a company or as a business with a voice. So I think that's an important distinction there. It's not just going into ChatGPT. This is like, no, it goes through a filter of who you are, what you're about, how you address people, how you serve people, and then it leverages the API to respond. Great.
Correct. Yeah. So because the problem, the concern is hallucinations. It's just going to make up something. So
what's a hallucination?
It's funny because hallucination is a technical term used by by the industry, is basically making it up. Just like we would say hallucinate. Someone hallucinated, the AI hallucinated something because it just made up something. Just like those case studies for that lawyer that got slapped by the judge.
Right.
So since we gave it the prompt that, if you don't know this information, don't say anything. So if I were to ask it, what is LinkedIn, for example, ideally OpenAI knows about this information, but let's see what it tries to do. I don't know. So what ended up happening is it checked my knowledge base. It looked up LinkedIn. There wasn't any pertinent information about LinkedIn in my knowledge base. So the end result, so then when that was fed over to OpenAI, when I gave all the information, just like I did before, and it tried to reason about it and try to analyze the output, it determined there is no answer.
This is another fascinating thing, which is it's like hiring an employee where you get to set parameters for how that employee talks. So for instance, if you were to go into an auto parts store and you were to ask the person behind the counter about LinkedIn, even if they'd used LinkedIn before or whatnot, basically they might be instructed to say something like, well, we are consultants on auto parts things. We really can't help you with that. Right. And in this situation, it's actually not that ChatGPT has no knowledge of LinkedIn. Right. Matter of fact, what we want is we want to leverage all of the learning ability that ChatGPT has had over time to get as sort of quasi-intelligent as it is. But we want it only to answer based on the type of information that we are providing. So in this case, it's not that, the big LLM that is ChatGPT doesn't know what LinkedIn is. We're just saying we only want you to answer these people's questions from these sets of data that we provide, which I think is an incredible piece because it does protect you against, false information from the internet out at large. It really is only going to share stuff that you allow it to share. So,
yeah.
Okay,
so
let's
look at
a new test case. Yes.
Yeah. So we're talking about like reading a knowledge base and just outputting data and stuff like that. But what about making it a little bit more dynamic, making it a little bit more creative? Well, there are ways to do that also where you could set up using existing frameworks to make custom built tools that leverage the AI to do actions for you. So I wanted to create an AI, leverage ChatGPT to do content creation. So using the frameworks, I integrated it with being able to do Bing searches through the search engine, in this case Bing, and then also to gather information and then to generate content from that information using, in this case, we're doing it conversational style. So this one was the first example was kind of one and done. We asked a question, we got a response. It wasn't conversational. This one's similar to how we're used to dealing with ChatGPT, but it's going to go out to the web and fetch information instead. And in this situation, it's been restricted to only fetching information from the web and trying to generate stuff. So, Trever, what would you like to for an idea to look up? Or
well, let's actually
let's
leverage this AI to ask it about stream closed captioner. I'm curious to see because it's going to hit Bing, right? It's going to this one's searching. This one doesn't pull from your internal knowledge base. This is actually going out to the web and searching.
So I'm clearing out this terminal, and I've coded that. There's a lot of moving pieces in this in terms of workflow, but what this is doing, this is using what are called agents to perform actions to have the AI interpret the question, figure out actions. We tell it what actions it could take. It takes that it says what action it wants to take. We execute code based off what it said, the action it wanted to do. And then we give it the response, and then it iterates from there, and it determines the next thing. So let's see. So right now jargon. It says, yeah. So right now it came back with an answer, string closed capture. So I'll fetch this from the web, just to kind of highlight what's going on. Is just to get into the nitty gritty again. We're getting into the prompts of instructing it of the AI should. The large language model should act. So in this situation, I'm telling it, you are an assistant tasked with help.
When you say you're telling it, real quick, this is programming that you have so that when somebody enters something in this box in content creator mode, basically, when they enter something in that box, it's going to take their question, and then this thing that you have here is pre-programmed, essentially a pre-programmed prompt that it's going to prepend and wrap their question in to make sure that the response coming back is a robust response associated with the type of tool it is that you're providing. Is that correct?
Yeah. Okay. Exactly. So just like we're telling the large language model, this is your restrictions. Here's the content on what you're here. This is here. Yeah. Here's your restriction. Here's the rules you have to abide by. Here's some content, take the next step. And in this situation, we're saying you are an assistant tasked with helping research topics for creating educational videos and blog posts. The assistant is designed to help assist with researching a wide range of topics, always providing in-depth explanations using only tools that had been provided or your knowledge of writing educational content. Assistant should take its time in thinking about original questions and rewrite any in a way that will help get the best results. Assistant should always ensure its response is verbose, contains all information necessary for creating detailed educational content. Overall, Assistant is a powerful system that can help research a wide range of topics, provide content creators with as much detailed information they need to create high quality educational content. However, above all else, all responses must adhere to the format. And this is where we get into the more instructional set of things.
Okay. So let's talk about this piece here. So what you're doing is you're actually, because when you open up this communication with the API, this is on its end, sort of its first time talking to you. So you are describing who you want this AI to act like. You're giving it the parameters of how it can respond and what its job is that you're giving it. And you're saying who you are and what you're requesting, like why you're requesting this type of information, what your outcomes are, and all of that. And this is, I guess, the part that I think is really great, and where you, not Erik, but you listening, can take your ideas about how you can help somebody and build something like this can be built to essentially box that, because most people will come to ChatGPT and they're going to ask that question: what is stream closed captioner? What they're not going to do is spend the time to craft basically a request like Erik has done here, that is essentially creating the parameters and is the expertise around how do you get ChatGPT to give you a quality answer, a quality result, essentially, right? And so if you have a knowledge as to how to explain something, or what language, or the way to introduce the roles that exist in this conversation and how this should be framed, that's the expertise. That's the part that you would play in this role, that is helping shape the persona of the AI and the constraints of the AI and the instructions for the AI. So people are still very involved in this. That's, I think, the thing is, like, it's creating scalable models of service here, because the people, you, are still the one defining how, what, and why. And then you're sort of partnering with your customer who's asking this question, who is defending, basically saying what it is that they're after. And then you're defining how and why and what else is going along with that information in order to shape an answer. So anyways, go ahead. Let's get through your demo here.
Yeah. So after we give it the persona, this section right here is a little bit more like in the weeds in terms of tooling, but basically we're telling it how it should analyze, which we're telling it research and determine an action based off the question and what tools you have available. In this case, we tell it you have Bing. You can use Bing to perform searches and look up information. And then it also will have an option to go into research. So if it needs to look up something, it's going to go search Bing. So it determined here through that it should use the action it should take is the Bing search, and it determined that the question the query it should ask, or the lookup, the text, is string closed captioner. It itself is not going and performing the search. Instead, the code is reading the parsed out output from ChatGPT, or the large language model, and then executing my own code. So again, the programmer plays into the role here, where then I have to parse it and then determine, they want to take the search, this action, and then I go and execute the code that would do that, and then give it the response. So that's what's happening here. And then here is the request, and Bing. So it called the Bing search API, and it came back with information about string closed captioner. We feed that, and then that information gets fed back into the large language model, and then the large language model will then return back a response based off of this code, the output from the search engine. So that's a lot of this. This is a very robust output, but it's showing that we're feeding it through, and then it determined and then through, and then it looked at the response and it determined that it had a final answer because of the information it had, formats it, and gives it back to us.
Fascinating.
But
Okay.
this is a
Keep going. Yep.
But this is a conversational model, so I can ask it another question. So I can ask like, what and this is similar to ChatGPT now, because now I already asked it what something. So now based off the previous context, I can just ask it what features does it have.
Does it have? You don't have to say stream closed caption, right? It's in context.
It's in context because we're creating a history of information on here. Right. So instead of one individual questions, we're creating a history of information. But now this is where things get into it start to slow down in terms of performance, because now what it has to do, it has to replay the entire history. We're storing in memory in code of the entire history of what was asked to ChatGPT. We give it the old history, we give it the new action, and then it has to analyze the old history, has to look at the new action, determine what it needs to do. And let's see here what it determined it needs to do. So if we scroll up here, it determined it needed to do another Bing search, and the Bing search was features of string closed captioner. So then it returned. So then that search came through, fed it back to ChatGPT, which ChatGPT then analyzed, and then came back with, a different, hopefully a different answer.
Okay. So now this is the content creator tool, right? So then what else can we do with this information?
So the thing I wanted to do, along with researching information, is that after it does that, I ask it, can you write a short? Can you write a YouTube video script? Let's see, in the voice of. Actually, let's write YouTube video script with this information.
Perfect.
And it can handle typos.
It can handle typos. It can handle really bad grammar. It doesn't,
because it's been trained on the internet, and there's plenty of people with bad grammar all over the internet.
So while this is thinking, let's talk real quick about what is really happening here, because it's not actually the form of intelligence that, at least that we as humans think and are. Okay, there it is. Let's see. Let's look at this response.
Yeah, so here we go. So it responded back, certainly, and then it did an introduction. The host, welcome to our channel. So it's like, it's just kind of generically generating something. Today we'll be discussing Stream Closed Captioner, a service that makes your Twitch streams and Zoom meetings more accessible by adding closed captions. Let's dive into its features and how it can be a benefit. And
so real quick, before you continue on, can you go back up to the prompt that you gave it? Are there triggers in this prompt that helped shape the prompt that you sent? Like, so is YT or YouTube or video script, is there anything in there that's that you're actually taking any local actions on or not?
So what happens is, so this is sent over to ChatGPT again, and let's see about the local actions on here. And we asked ChatGPT, what information it wants to do. And let's see here.
Basically, what I'm getting at is are you saying I want things structured in a certain way, or are you just letting it come up with a script?
In this case, all I'm doing is, by telling it YouTube video, it is going to, based off its training on already ingesting in potentially millions of YouTube videos, it already has this, it already knows the pattern of right. YouTube videos in general. There's a set script to it. There's like algorithm.
You can have it only train on your videos. Is that correct?
Correct.
So that way, when it writes a script, based on how your cadence is, how you form your shows, the sections and different types of area of content that you have in your scripts. You could train it on your scripts. And so then it would basically come up with a script that's sort of similar to the way that you frame and shape your scripts of your show.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. And through that prompting, it generated a script for us. that we could use.
Very cool. That's awesome. Um, okay, so you have some other models in here that you've created as well.
Yeah.
So and essentially each of these is just different. Okay, so tell me the difference between these. Is not without like getting into the nitty gritty details. What is at the high level? What's different between those different drop downs? What are you setting differently between those? Same code base, essentially, right?
Same code base, different data sets. So I've been experimenting with so this content creator one is more of a retrieval. It's taking action. It's taking a request and performing an action, trying to receive information and trying to just generate information. So that's one flow of that. It seemed like a really cool thing to try to experiment with. The Twitch Helix, Stream CC, and these two right here, these are using knowledge bases. So for the string closed captioner one, I use my own wiki knowledge base. For the Twitch Helix one, what I did with this one is I scraped the API documentation for Twitch's Helix API so that I could ask it questions. So just to see how that would work out. So it's like, how can I request, how can I get user information? So not just give it like a generic human question, not like overly
Not
technical,
like a prompt
and
that
see
would
what it
already
does.
be in their API, right?
Yeah. So this was going to search the API documentation because I had converted that to an embedding where it's searched. You can do that similarity search, and it's going to iterate through that. And in the same way that the string closed captioner one did, it grabbed potential documents from the knowledge base, the knowledge base I created, and generate and give it to ChatGPT or the large language model. And then the large language model is going to generate an output for that. I had given it some additional prompting on how exactly I might want this to look, but here it goes. It gave me a full kind of documented case of how to use the API. So if you're a software as a service and you want to enhance your documentation, you want to really allow help with onboarding for your services for them to start using your APIs, a large language model like this, a generative AI, is perfect because it not only it allowed them to quickly, instead of them doing a search and then just finding articles and trying to figure out which articles, the generative AI can ingest all the pertinent documents based off their question and then generate the exact answer they potentially want.
The use case, it's creating a use case based on documentation, which is fascinating. That's so awesome. That's a superpower, really, right there. That is a superpower. And even so, in this is a great example of someone who like Helix has robust documentation, but you have to know what you're looking for. And then potentially if you have a use case that you're after, you might have to look up this piece of documentation, this piece of documentation, and this piece of documentation and figure out how to pass data around and do different actions in order to reach an outcome. Whereas here, he could just ask it, this is the outcome I'm trying to reach. How would I go about doing that? And it's going to piece all that information together and give you steps to take, which is just like, that is next level. That's service. To me, that's a massive service bump in above and beyond just providing documentation, right? Which is sort of a low level service because that still requires effort to make use of, I guess.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. So I hope that, are we good on the demo right now, Erik? Is that cool? Are you good? I think
if you're good with the demos, I got
you got more.
I could
Let's
show
do
more.
one more. Let's do one more.
So talking about, so this one's a little bit more experimental. It depends on how fast this can go. But I also got curious about creating a YouTube to blog post generator. So I've seen services that can take a YouTube script, YouTube subtitles, and try to take that and generate content, like written content for that. And that's what this model is trying to do. This one's the newest one. I've just finished creating this a couple,
do it
last
live.
night.
Do it live.
Yeah. So what I'm going to do is, to ensure this goes kind of quicker, I'm going to try to take one of my smaller videos, like my shorts, And the way I set this up is I can just give it the ID, the YouTube ID. And what this is going to do is this is going to go and fetch the subtitles from that video. And then it's going to try to generate a blog post off of this based off the prompting that I have. So it is already trying to go, and we can see right here that it fetched YouTube content. So it's fetched it fetched the subtitles in here. And then what it's doing is it's asking, I set up one of the what they call a refinement agent that will iterate through the content of the subtitles, feeding it, because there was a question about what happens if there's 300 pages of documents and stuff like that. Well, a video could be really, really long. So what it does, it's like we feed it a piece of the script at a time, and then we ask it to keep on refining the blog post based off the new contents of the script, based off that prompting we've seen previously with the other asks of the OpenAI model. So we'll see it iterating through, and it's going to keep on going, and we're going to see this content block here. It's probably going to get a little bit bigger.
Are you vamping right now? Because it takes some time.
A little bit. It takes a little bit.
There's a lot of processing happening here, right? It's doing a lot of work.
Yeah. And we can see right here, your job is to produce a blog post based off the content. And here we go. And based off that YouTube video and some prompting I gave it, it created a title for it, Discover Bing's Hidden AI Image Generator. And then it gave us a description.
It even has images in line.
Yeah, and I asked it to generate images in line using Place Kitten for where it determined images can go.
Place Kitten.
So it gave titles and sections.
So this is just placeholder images where it thinks you should put images. Now in the future, you could actually have it generate those images or find suggested images for those locations as well, right? So
correct. I mean, I could probably plug this in and ask it to generate an image using DALL-E or Stable Diffusion potentially, right, based off how it determined that information.
Awesome. So there's pros and cons to this. The pro is that someone like Erik or someone who is a content creator, who's a sort of like solo content creator, they don't have a whole team around them, but they make videos, and there's a lot to being a content creator as far as if you want to create exposure and get your information out there to as many people as possible. Leveraging tools like this can make this process of sharing your content out so much easier and reduce the time it takes to share your content out by helping you and essentially assisting you in converting your video into other formats. Or and then from this, you could probably ask it very simply, can you help me write an Instagram post about this to share this blog post, right? And then it would write the post for you and give you a link to your blog post and all these things. So what's cool is we can, on the programming side, we can actually build out all of the infrastructure of the tool that you want the AI to be able to help with, right? So as a content, if you have these ideas around a tool you want to build for content creators, like this is the crude piece, which is you saw the content creator demo that he did earlier, where it's like, okay, do this research, help me write this post or help me write this script. Then he can go record the script, and then from that, he can have it converted into a blog post. He can have some posts created. He can generate some images. And then through programming, you can probably automate all of the posting of those things. You can, so again, when you couple the AI with a team that can actually build the tooling around that AI to make it real functional, it's not just conversational at that point. You can actually empower single person teams to be exponentially productive, right? And this is, I think, what we're starting to see. And again, I hate the concept of just replacing a whole bunch of people, like taking what used to be 10 people's jobs and reducing it to just like one person can run all of that. It's kind of like, I don't know, it's a weird thing. We've been doing this and iterating on this ever since humans have been creating technology. We've been as we iterate on technology over the millennia, every time some new advancement comes along, it ends up displacing the jobs of people who used to do that thing, right? And that's just part of the evolution. The problem with right now is this evolution is happening more rapidly. So it's actually going to start displacing more and more jobs over time. But that's a problem that needs to be solved. That's not the problem we're trying to solve today. We want to help you build these tools. We want to help you solve these problems. And let's have a little virtual hand for Erik and his demo today. That was awesome. And thank you for sharing that, Erik. Really appreciate that. And again, just a shout out to say, again, this was built in Redwood, which Redwood is basically an assemble and of other tools. It's leveraging the sort of best of class tooling in the React framework space, and that's why we've chosen to leverage that. That's why Erik's using that on this tool that he's building, this demo that you're seeing. But we're not limited to just working in React in Redwood. There's lots of other languages and frameworks, whatever it is that your application or website is built in. We could probably leverage and work with that to build the same kind of tooling. So if this is something that you're interested in or would like to reach out and have a conversation about, please reach out directly, DM myself. I would love to have a conversation with you, and we can get on the phone and talk through whatever the problem is that you're trying to solve. We get people like Erik involved to talk to you about what you're trying to work on and come up with some creative solutions. We're also happy to just share our knowledge and expertise on it, like we did today in this demo. We'll look at doing some other demos in the future of how this tooling is progressing and what we're doing with it, and actually we'll see if we can't maybe get one of our clients to allow us to, with them, share some of how they're leveraging these tools in their products. We are sort of bound not to be able to do that due to NDAs and things, but they can choose to share that information if they would like. So maybe I'll be able to get one of our clients on at some point to talk about how they're leveraging AI in their products. We hope you have an amazing day. Erik, go ahead and a little sign off. Where can people find you and your YouTube content?
You can find me on all the socials at Talk to Me Guzman, and Erik Guzman on LinkedIn, but on Twitter, YouTube, Mastodon.
All the places.
Me there.
Yeah. Fantastic. We appreciate you being here. Again, don't miss out on the Redwood JS Conf. It's going to be here in Southern Oregon, Grants Pass. We're hosting it right here. We're bringing the world to Southern Oregon, and it's going to be amazing. And it's a big one. So to look it up, redwoodjsconf.com is where you can find more information. You can get tickets. We look forward to chatting with you again in the future. Have yourself an amazing day.